Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Bengal Tiger Podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Shea Dixon. And Shea, we're about 2 hours after the field goal hooks left for South Carolina, ensuring a LSU 36-33 victory. And I think I could hear across the city of Baton Rouge, everybody just exhale all at once as the Tigers get the win, improve to 2-1 on the season, and 1-0 in conference play. How are you feeling?
I mean, I feel like I'm stuck in the four dimensions. Maybe I'm in time. I don't know what three dimensions of space. I'm in height, which direction I'm going. I've seen a lot of crazy LSU games and maybe with much more dramatic play and much more on the
Yeah.
line. But in terms of a roller coaster, that was about as roller coaster as you can get in terms of like every element of something happening for each team and refs. Like it had everything. We should have known when Brian Kelly they won the toss and Brian Kelly deferred that it was already off. It was way off script.
Yep.
Everything was going to be haywire. He's never done it, and there he does it.
Yep. There were 5 turnovers in this game. There were 22 penalties in this game. There were
Oh,
15,
that was so gross by both teams.
15 combined tackles for loss in this game. Yet both teams, if you just look at it by there were explosive plays from both teams, which we'll talk about. South Carolina's, obviously, they had their 2 big touchdown runs. And like you said, South Carolina goes up 17-0 with a blocked punt. LSU also has a botched PAT, which results in them having to go for 2 that they don't get. And then, like you said, after it's 17-0 and the place is rocking, LSU does come back. They pick themselves up. They put on a fight, going to half down 24-16. Then the second half, I think, especially with Lenora Sellers going down and them going to Robbie Ashford, South Carolina's offense just kind of died, except for the big run. And it let LSU stay back in the game, even though LSU continued to give South Carolina chances to put the game away. They just couldn't do it. And eventually LSU breaks through. And even when they do break through, with a minute left, South Carolina gets the ball. Robbie Ashford leads them down the field, gets an attempt to tie the game on a 49-yard field goal to tie it.
Yeah, 49.
And
Yes,
it
he had made from 42 earlier in the quarter.
and it hooks left by 2 feet, 3 feet. They thought it went in initially, and yeah. So
Can
there's
I
the game.
say, and I've not taken a deep dive into the South Carolina boards or fan base to know. I'm sure they're talking about the refs or them swinging
Yeah.
the game and giving it up in different ways, which is it'd be the same stuff LSU's talking about. It was that crazy a game, but and I made this comment on the board a couple of times when Lenora Sellers, the starting quarterback, went down with an injury. Yes, LSU had gone down 17-0. He led a great opening drive. He had a 75-yard touchdown run on one play that immediately was an answer for South Carolina to kind of extend the lead again. But in that first half, and he got injured at the very end. I think he came in for one play in the second half, maybe, but they were 1 for 5 on third down. He had a fumble. He had a pick. He was 8 for 15 passing. That's 53%. And beyond the 75-yard run, which is obviously explosive, you had those negatives, but also the other 9 carries were for 13 yards. So I was the one saying I remember Robbie Ashford at Auburn putting up 300 on a bad LSU defense. Like
Yep.
this kid can go around, scramble, and as a fifth-year senior, throw it a bit. You got a taste of that at the end when obviously he got sacked, and then he had a big play to move him down, and then he immediately moves it with his feet.
Yep.
I don't think Lenora Sellers or Robbie Ashford was the difference in this one for South Carolina. There wasn't enough Lenora Sellers, like those stats I just read in the first half. Yeah, the 75-yard touchdown yard run was great. That first opening drive was great, but he was fumbling, interception,
Oh
50%
yeah.
completion
Very erratic.
percentage. So I almost felt like LSU had seen him for a whole half and could answer from there. And then you have to get ready for Ashford. Kudos to Blake Baker and this defense, man. And we can talk about that now if you want or
Yeah.
whenever, but they have stepped up again. They stepped up against Lincoln Riley's defense. Yes, I know you lose with 8 seconds left, or Lincoln Riley's offense in Southern Cal. You lose that game with 8 seconds left, but they did a lot. They'd held them to 10 at halftime. And in this one, yeah, you got down 17-0. But again, those first half stats weren't crazy. And then they came out and allowed just 1 yard in the third quarter. And they were coming up. You mentioned 5 turnovers. LSU had 3 of them. And this time they capitalized. They fell on all 3 of them and they made the pick.
Yes, and they had a turnover on downs as well. Both teams had a turnover on downs both ways. Obviously, LSU was at the 1, which is another.
This game had everything.
Game had literally everything you wanted in it. We can talk about the defense though, because I do think it's the most interesting aspect of it. If you had told me going into the game South Carolina scored 33 points, I would have told you that
You didn't
LSU
think they
was
were
in
going to score
trouble.
21.
I didn't think they'd score 21, and obviously the punt block, and there are factors that played into this. But I think overall, if you look at it like play by play, I think a lot of people will leave this game actually encouraged, similar to what you said. Like they got the stops when it mattered, and especially in the second half, they were not getting repeatedly beaten. What hurts is that you gave up the 75-yard touchdown run to Sellers and the 66-yard touchdown run to Sanders. And those plays obviously account for 14, and then you have the blocked punt, which results in another touchdown. So that's 21 points right there off of really inexplicable busts that you can't have. So I'm cool with saying the defense showed enough that you can pull positives from it. But at the same time, the Nichols game, you give up that big run. Here, you give up 2 of those big runs. Like those can't happen. That's not good. That is inexcusable to allow against a South Carolina team that can't throw the ball. You should have your run fits ready. And so that is, for me, it's like, yes, I'm cool with taking positive because overall the defense wasn't like horrible, but South Carolina is not a good offense, and you give up 2 60-plus yard runs, like that can't happen. The game should have been over if you just have your run fits done.
Yeah, that's right. I had harped on this on the preview podcast and said that South Carolina had not proven yet this season against whether it be Old Dominion or
Yeah,
Kentucky in a blowout win or a close call that they could sustain drives across
at
a whole
all.
game. And they came out on that first drive, 7 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. It was like, uh-oh, like watch out. And the next time down, they drove it. I think they had like 6 plays. They only went 28 yards, but they went deep to the end zone. Zy Alexander picks it off. He got hurt. We'll have to get an injury update there.
Yeah.
But then on the following one, 13 plays, 65 yards. LSU holds them to a field goal,
That
but
was
they
the
hit
most
it,
concerning drive, and it only ended in a field goal.
and it ends in a field goal. And then you're just now into the opening minutes of the second quarter, and they go one play for
10
what?
yards after the block
No,
punt.
yeah, one play for 10 yards after the block punt to score a touchdown. So
Yeah.
when you put that together and compound it sort of with LSU's first 3 drives were punt, 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 it was even into the second quarter when they first got the ball, the drive ended. It was a punt, 4 plays. It felt like, oh no, it's 17-0, and this is about to get very ugly. And we can talk about the fight, all that. But speaking to the defense, from there, forced a fumble, allowed a touchdown that was a one snap, and Lenora Sellers ran that 75-yarder in about 5 minutes left till half, and that was just after LSU had hit a field goal, but then
17 to 10.
LSU answers as well with a touchdown not long thereafter. But immediately it was like, okay, you had some momentum, and then boom, Lenora Sellers runs. But it was one play, like you said, you cannot have those busts. Then turnovers on downs, punt, punt. Now we're into the fourth quarter. A 3-play drive, as you said, another long run, a set 3-play 75-yard drive. But what? How long was the run by Rocket Sanders? 60 something yards.
Yeah.
So you had them sort of in a spot, third down, and then boom, Rocket Sanders is gone. After that, buckled right back in. I mean, they gave up the only points the rest of the way were a field goal where they allowed no yards. It was after
The fumble off the chest.
Yeah, that's correct. And they allowed no yards. So kicked a field goal, then force another fumble, then force a punt. Then they do allow them to come downfield. Ultimately, they missed the field goal. Didn't give them enough. Close to a 50-yard field goal. That's not a gimme. So, yes, I feel like in that 17-0 was like, oh, man, South Carolina's putting together long drives, which they have not done, across any stint of time consecutively all season. And wait, for the first time all season, LSU's offense is punting. Like they haven't been doing that ever. And then it changes, and we can flip it to the offense. And look, I know that people felt like it all went negative, but with 12 minutes left in the second quarter, they found Caden Durham, and you find your run game, and it went touchdown, field goal, touchdown. That turnover on downs, which was
at the 1 yard line.
brutal,
Yep.
and one that gets all the way down to the USC 1 yard line. You're not able to punch it in. But then after that, you come back very deflating turnover on
I will
downs,
say then.
and you come back touchdown.
Yeah,
Like that was huge for them. Then you mentioned Garrett Nussmeier took one off the face mask. He fumbles it. I don't even know what he was yelling at the refs about. I didn't catch. Maybe
I
he said it.
assume it was him saying maybe South Carolina did something like
Whatever it
stimulating
was.
signals or something like that.
And look, it was loud there. DJ Chester's a young center. There's going to be mistakes. We know that. But that was one of them. Ends up the defense bails you out, saves you to no yards and a field goal. They punted again, which was one of those with 10 minutes left, Maddie B, 3 and out, but it was 4th and 1 in their own territory at the 34. And it was like, all right, the defense has been playing pretty well, even though we don't think the defense is, the best in the world. But Brian Kelly decides to punt it, and in the end, it pays off because after that, even with that pick six that gets called back because Kennard blindsides Nuss, which ultimately then doesn't result in them getting a big amount of yards or a score, or whatever it might have been, allows LSU that window, that final window, 8 plays, 55 yards, touchdown, minute left, and then again, South Carolina misses it. Even as I read through both sides of the scoring chart, that doesn't account for like 80% of the wildness that happened in that game.
I mean, how many like reviews were there for like catches?
The refs for both sides I thought were terrible. I don't even know what planet they were on half the time with. And I'm not being like I'm just saying, like, as an onlooker, if I'm a neutral observer or I'm a fan of either team or even in media, there was a lot where it's like, okay, what's even happening anymore? Like, bad call, missed call. Why would you call that? That seems kind of nitpicky. Like, so much of that was going on in this game.
Yeah, and LSU fans will tell you, they missed some holds on the South Carolina long run. South Carolina fans will tell you that there were missed calls on their side. So ultimately, this was a game where both teams had chances to put it away. South Carolina obviously
And how big was the? I guess they call it. Yeah, they called it a catch, or did they reverse it? But Lacey, when they're in the booth, kind of saying this is not a catch because he doesn't make a football play, and then he one hands it out of bounds and loses it, and they confirm it because 2 hands, and then they said he did make a move upfield. I think if you've got it with 2 hands and you have 2 feet on the ground and you go out of bounds and no one else has touched you yet, I don't really understand what the issue is, but that got him the ball that got on the ball at the 2 or 3 yard line. And I think that's when LSU's fans got scared because it was like, can we even punch this in?
Yeah.
And they do.
Yeah. This is the offense. I mean, both sides, obviously we can spend a lot of time on, but like offense, especially, Nussmeier. Well, first of all, let's start with Caden Durham. Caden Durham being the run game, the only one to Xavion had one rush for 12 yards, but he was Caleb Jackson 3.9 yards per carry, Josh Williams 2 yards per carry, Caden Durham 8.9 yards per carry. He was making people miss. He was breaking tackles. He was getting to the open field, popping runs. Like that's what we've been waiting for. We'll go back and we'll maybe watch the film and see how he did it, or maybe what changed, whether it's with the defense or the blocking or whatnot. But Caden Durham gave them vision.
Grit.
Caden Durham gives them that spark in the run game, and that opened up, I think, a lot of what they could do with the pass game and with a lot of different stuff. So, he was huge. Do you have something to add on that? I don't know.
No, I think he was great. And I think at this point, he's going to replace a lot of what Caleb Jackson did or does moving forward. They're always going to play Josh Williams. Josh did have a touchdown run that was huge for him because, look, they were having trouble punching it in. Great play call design. They kind of when the motion happened, it swept everybody. And then he was able to easily, with good blocking, just walk right into the end zone for the go-ahead score in the final minute, or a little over a minute left. But he did have a his long was 5. So like he wasn't
Yeah.
chunking you out there. But at least he got that one, punched it in at the end, and he's obviously going to handle a lot of blocking duties. But Durham was unbelievable, and it was him, and he went for 2 yards short of 100, but a long of 26. I mean, he was consistently moving it
Yep.
forward, and it's so funny. I mean, he was a 10, what, three,
Yeah.
four
10,
track
3,
guy
4.
at
Yep.
200 pounds plus pounds, obviously.
Yep.
And everybody was like, wow, this is insane. But he was kind of that one cut back, get up field home run. Today, he was bouncing out outside. He was getting hit. He was
Yep.
breaking the tackle. He was keeping kind of both his feet moving to the point where he regained his balance and kept getting extra yards. I think that it is fair to say they found a run game today with Caden Durham.
Yeah, and I expected, like, going into it, I said this was going to be LSU's best rushing performance as a team because South Carolina had struggled, but I wasn't expecting it to come from Durham. I thought Jackson or Williams would get going a little bit, but it doesn't matter. Whoever gives it to you is all you need. So Nussmeier was polarizing to some people. I think for the most part, people understood what they saw, but I think some people, especially
It
after
wasn't
the
his best day, but he
interception,
was also on his back half the day.
there
He
the
made some NFL
ability
throws today too.
the ability for him to overcome that start where his offensive line is getting beaten every single snap. The blitzes are coming unblocked half the time. And for him to maintain enough composure throughout the game to just sit there and yeah, sure, he throws off his back foot sometimes, but the arm talent he has allows him to do that. He's not throwing off the back foot and lofting it, allowing defensive backs to get into the play. Like he is throwing darts out there. And he found Aaron Anderson a ton, which we'll talk about the receivers, but like he found the players he needed to find when it mattered. He ends the game 24-40, 285, 2 touchdowns. The one pick was awful. Like, yes,
Yeah,
that
it
was
was
an
terrible.
inexcusable throw. He needed to see that. But for the most part, especially in that window where they
He's
scored,
lucky he got smashed on that play, or
yes,
the game they might have lost the
the game,
game.
yes, they would have lost the game if not. But in that 5 or 6 drive window where they scored 31 points, he was almost like perfect. So he brings them back, and then eventually, like you said, the run game and everything. I thought Nussmeier was perfectly fine. Obviously, the interception was bad, but
I
overall, like
mean, he
he
was
was he was
he
more
had
than
some
fine.
low moments. He had some unbelievable moments with anticipation throws and timing throws that were clutch and great. He's gritty. He's getting hit. He's getting hit low. It's not getting called on that one, but he bounced back, limps around. I mean, that's what you're going to get out of Garrett Nussmeier. I'm very curious if moving forward, if I think they have to kind of run some of these plays where if it is a read option, he's keeping it because
Mhm.
South Carolina was just teeing off on that.
Yeah,
And there were so many times, including a touchdown run, where had he just kept it, he would have walked right across the left side and in for, into the end zone or in for a gain. I know he's not a runner, but he can run. So
yeah,
I think at some point we have to see some of that to keep a defense a little bit more honest, but did enough to get it done today. And look, here's the thing, and we can talk about the receivers too, and then we'll get into the bigger picture. But
yeah.
Mason Taylor led the way in catches, 6 for 58 and a touchdown. Uh, Kyron Lacey, he did. I even said this on the board
Showed up
as
again.
they were driving down at the end before halftime. I was like, Kyron Lacey does not even have a catch yet. Maybe not a
Mhm.
target. He's either about to change that, or you're going to ask questions at halftime. First target or first catch, touchdown at a massive moment. He finishes with 5 for 63. CJ Daniels, the transfer out of Liberty, Matty B. This was his kind of coming out game, obviously. 5 targets, caught 4 of them, 53 yards, a big one for 20 yards. But I think the winner is Aaron Anderson, right? I mean, 6 targets, 5 catches, 96 yards, along a 46. But everything was so sure-handed by him, downfield, in traffic, whatever it was. And he's not a big-bodied guy, but there were no drops. He caught it. He took the hit. He holds on. He gets yards after the catch. Between what he's done at receiver and then what Xavier Thomas can do at receiver, but also what he's done in the return game, 2 massive transfers to bring back home from SEC schools.
Yeah, and the receiving core, obviously, even without Chris Hilton, we have a lot of belief in, like, at this point, and I
Well,
go ahead.
those guys for sure, right? Anderson,
Yes,
Lacey. Now you're seeing more of Daniels. Obviously, Thomas has played, and then a tight end in Mason Taylor. Like
yes,
we thought those guys could do this. Maybe it's Anderson, I guess. Really, Matty B, who's raised
yeah,
his level of what expectation.
Yeah, because I mean, last year went into the season expecting him to get some catches, and he never really did or wasn't healthy. But now he's not just catching short balls; he caught that one over the shoulder where Nussmeier just
God,
dropped it in the basket, and he was ran under it. So,
and then one over the middle at the end of the
yep,
also late in the game that was a huge play.
yep. So the receivers, Nussmeier, the pass game is not a concern to me moving forward. Like we know that's a clear strength. I think they are going to be able to pass the ball on anyone, especially because they're not going to face a pass rush as aggressive or as good as South Carolina's, which leads me to potentially the most disappointing part. Or do you have something before we get to the
Was
offensive line?
that what is your most disappointing part?
The offensive line.
Yeah, well, even with you kind of laying out that disclaimer here of that they won't face a better D line, and maybe that is the case or front seven, and maybe it's not the case. They have not looked great through 3
No,
weeks.
no.
And then today they looked their worst. And it could that sure, okay, you're facing your best competition will rise to that level. Instead, they looked the worst that they've looked. It was a bad day for Will Campbell. It was a bad day for Emory Jones. It was a bad day for Miles Frazier. It was a bad day for a very young DJ Chester. I'm not sure of how many mistakes Garrett Dellinger made, but I can list off 4 guys who played far lower than what expectations are for them. It let's we haven't been preaching it in season, but certainly we're pressing pause on this. Like, this is the best O line in America, because before we were saying they're not great in the run, but they're great at pass pro. They haven't given up a sack,
Yeah,
and South Carolina just teed off on them.
yeah. I was shocked at that actually, and because I in the preview podcast I was like, Will Campbell's going to win his matchup. I was just like, Will Campbell against a freshman, Dylan Stewart. Dylan Stewart went to work.
You called it out though. You said USC's DC. You said, look, he's been around. He's very good. Burlsworth
Yeah.
nominee multiple times. Like, he said, his game plan was very clear. These guys are going to sit back there and try to throw the ball. Let's just tee off because Nuss
Yes.
ain't running it. And Nuss
Yes.
didn't run it, and they teed off on him.
Yes. And it was probably the worst offensive line performance under Brian Kelly, just without thinking too far back. And again, Jaden Daniels is a different quarterback from Garrett Nussmeier. I
Yeah,
understand
he
that.
could make a terrible O line game look, forget, you don't even realize it because
But
he takes
I
off.
don't I hadn't seen Will Campbell get beaten like this since Jared Verse, and even then Jared Verse didn't beat him like repeatedly. They had like really good back and forth. This time it was like almost half the time it felt like Campbell was struggling
There
significantly here.
was there were a lot
It
of
was
people
weird.
for offensive tackles, and look, Emory Jones will be an offensive guard probably at the next level, and some people think that Will Campbell will be.
Yeah.
But I think for 2 tackles, their length is probably the only thing that people kind of question sometimes, and faced up against Kennard and obviously a guy like Dylan Stewart, that is put right under the
Yeah.
microscope. I
And
mean, there were times where Campbell tried to reach and they were right by him.
yeah, and the blitzes which I mentioned going into the game, South Carolina was going to throw some blitzes at them, and whether it was Chester or somebody else who didn't pick it up, or the running back I think on one situation didn't pick it up, like Nussmeier was under fire constantly. There was one of the completions I don't remember. I think it was the Lacey out route, maybe in the third quarter for a first down on third down, where they freeze framed down the pocket on his release, and it's like 4 dudes, it's like within 2 feet of him. You're like, oh my gosh. So it was not a comfortable game for LSU's offensive line, and therefore for Garrett Nussmeier at all. The biggest thing was that they found a run game, because if they didn't find a
Oh,
run game,
Caden
South
Durham
Carolina
bailed
would
him
have
out.
continued to come just rushing right at Nussmeier with no regard.
Here's the thing. Unless you already know the answer from staring, don't stare at the stat sheet right now. Don't look at
Okay.
it. Quit looking. Quit looking.
Go ahead.
How many sacks did South Carolina have?
I responded to someone on the board earlier. It was
Oh, so
2.
you know the answer.
It was 2, right?
2.
Yeah.
Felt like a lot more than that, didn't it? 2. So
Yes.
a lot of quarterback hurries, certainly, right? I don't know how many they were credited for 3 quarterback hurries and 2 sacks. It felt like more quarterback hurries than that. But
Yeah.
if anything, they were disruptive. They made him get off platform, all that kind of stuff. So look, it was a really good defensive effort by South Carolina, but in that same vein, LSU, who came up with 5 sacks in this game, who
Yeah.
forced 4 fumbles in this game, who came up with a pick in this game, who had 9 tackles for loss, Maddie B, in this game. Whit Weeks gets into double-digit tackles, but Swinson played great. Shand played very well. Savion Jones played awesome. We saw
Yeah.
flashes from Harold Perkins. I mean, I can go up and down. Like Sage Ryan had a
Like, yeah.
huge play at one point, a guy that, look, and even though he took a bad angle, he gets
Sage,
burned
yeah,
on a long
gives and
run.
takes.
The D line got washed out of that play completely. So
Yeah.
there's more guys to blame. So no, nobody played perfect, but they also started Deshaun Spears, a true freshman, Ahmad Bro, a true freshman. Like they're not working with an
A loaded
LSU
deck.
defense that is anywhere close to what people know the standard to be, right? And that's not a knock on those players. They're young kids. They're brand new to the program and are starting for the first time. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot of games like this, I think, where, and to kind of maybe wrap this up and
Yeah.
given it's kind of our reaction pod, we go very deep into it on the Monday mailbag. But if you're not great, it's not like you're elite on defense by any means, nor should that be the expectation. You now do have someone who can spark you in the return game. You've got a pretty good kicker, and you've got an offense that did not have a run game before today. Now you might have found a little bit of one in Caden Durham and see what you can do moving forward. See if you can move that room forward and if you can get anything from the other guys. You've got a quarterback who will stick out there and sling it. You've got some receivers who can make plays, but
Yeah.
it's not so refined and advanced. No matter what LSU fans would hope that you're going to go out there, at least we shouldn't expect and just like blow teams out that you should like. This is SEC, and in most of these games they will play, it is going to be like this, where
Yeah.
you just have to find a way to win, and that's what LSU did. Look at it, Matty B. They all three games this year, LSU has led in the fourth quarter. Everyone says they gave away USC. They gave it away in week one, and you end up losing with 8 seconds left. This one, it felt like, oh, they're going to give it away. They had to earn it. They had to crawl back into it. And they did. And then at the end, South Carolina misses a field goal and most certainly felt like they were the ones who gave it away. I was watching the broadcast back again at the end, and I think Herb Street or Fowler, one of them had said it well. The team that wins this can really say, hey, we dug deep and we've got some positive, momentum that we can build on moving forward. And the team that loses it is really going to have to say, we're back to the drawing board. And if that was LSU losing it, it would have been even beyond back to the drawing board. So
Yeah.
I know sometimes I say a loss can have a little fool's gold in it, and so can a win. And maybe there is some of that in this. It's not like everything got cleaned up. It wasn't pretty. But the one thing is, they were losing 17-0 on the road
Yeah.
with the team that we know they have. And they fought themselves all the way back through all of the roller coaster and managed to win.
Yes. I think this game was the ceiling of this team is not as high as people want it to be. Like, let's just be straight up. Like, it's not probably not a 10-2 team. Like, just looking at it, you're gonna
No,
have
that would take a lot of fortune moving
it would
forward.
take a complete 180, I think, to get to that level. The offense, we know what it is. I think it's efficient. I think it's going to be good. Maybe I can already see people in their reply saying South Carolina is not the best defense we're going to play, and I didn't mean that. I meant the best, maybe the best front. But A&M, Alabama, there are going to be some Ole Miss. There are going to be some good defenses LSU plays that they're going to have to produce against. But the offense is not last year's offense. They're not putting up 45 points a game. We know this going in. I think the defense, I don't feel great about it right now, but I feel better than I did last year simply because I think they do still have more playmakers and they have a defensive corner that is putting them in position to make more plays. Now, the busted coverages and the busted run fits can happen, but you have now 3 weeks where you play UCLA, South Alabama, and a bye before you play Ole Miss. And yes, I'm already writing off those 2 non-conference games in terms of the result. We'll see how they play, but you have 3 weeks now to get ready for Ole Miss, and that's the game that will determine this first half of the season. It
Well,
will
yeah, and
determine where we go from there.
you could be 4-1
Yes,
and not have lost an SEC game yet if you can get through to that point.
yes,
And then we'll see where it goes from there. Look, Ole Miss is playing great football. I don't know how the result of today's game against Wake goes, obviously, but I would expect them to win. They can put up points, but I think that beyond Bama and Ole Miss, as you said, UCLA, South Alabama, you can get wins. You may be scrapping against Arkansas, A&M,
Bro,
a
this is
bad Florida team. I doubt
where
Vandy's going to give them a
yeah, like
ton, but we'll
I
see.
just
But
don't
they're
see it.
better teams than those teams.
Yeah,
Oklahoma, who
yeah,
has not looked great this year. Like, you'll be in a scrap with these teams, but they're not better than you are.
yeah,
Bama and Ole Miss are,
yeah.
but that's
Like
not a
this,
shock. They're higher in the rankings. They have better rosters right now. Like, that's where they're at. So I think we're just gonna get. Let's just expect not the unexpected, but the expected. They're probably going to be in a dogfight in every SEC game the rest of the way, minus Vanderbilt,
yes, exactly. Like this
and
is
then
what you
trying to hang with Bama and Ole Miss.
I didn't even mention about this game. Like the penalty, they need to clean up the penalties, like the mental
Oh,
errors. Of course, like this is where the next 3 weeks are just so important because you're going to be in close games like this, and teams are not going to fumble the game away the way South Carolina did in a lot of instances, right? Like if they're in a tight game with Ole Miss, they're probably going to execute down the stretch. So you have to execute as well. You can't have penalties. You can't throw an interception inside the 10. You can't get stopped at the 1 yard line 3 straight times. Like you have to make those plays to win the game. And so that's going to be interesting how they evolve over the next 3 weeks, how they get more disciplined, how they stop the explosive plays in the run game, and who they ultimately decide in the secondary they want to play. Because as much as I think, yeah, I want to see all these guys play, you have to figure it out. Like if it's Spears and Gilbert, play them. If it's Spears and Ryan, play them. Like if it's Burns and Ryan, play them. Like you have to figure out who the best 4 or 5 guys in the secondary are and play them because I don't know if there's a right answer, but we have to figure it out at this point in the next 3 weeks. So that's
I'll say
probably
another thing, and it speaks to South Carolina came up with a couple big plays that really kept them in this off of 60 and 70-yard touchdown scores. But South Carolina got out to a 17-point lead because they had 11 first downs in the first quarter.
yeah,
They across the next 3 quarters, they had 7 combined.
yeah,
I mean, that's a great job by the LSU defense. Both teams were 0-1 on fourth down. The fourth down for LSU is obviously one that speaks to this issue of they get into the red zone. And while today, if you just look at it, 5 of 7 in the red zone, all right, but it was at one point 3 of 6, and it was 3 touchdowns and nothing. Like then the rest was nothing.
yeah,
So you can't keep coming away with nothing, and you're going to have to continue to come away with touchdowns more than field goals. The timeliness of that driving down after half, deferring, getting the ball, having the chance to take the lead, driving down and not getting it felt like a backbreaker. Thankfully, Auburn had to be very conservative there. They nearly got him for a safety. And then I believe they did score on the next drive after that. But
yes,
again, they'll have to figure those things out. But hey, look, they got back down in the red zone with 2 minutes left, and they ran the ball from a couple yards out and scored the winning touchdown. And not long before that, they were into the red zone and called a pretty good play to Mason Taylor, who's wide open to
yeah,
get a touchdown. So there was good, there was bad. Like we said, this was about. I have to watch this game again. Like I need 24 hours before I can even watch it again because it was such a roller coaster. I mean, it felt like it took all day.
yeah. If 4 hours and 12 minutes or something like that, it was
The joy of 11 a.m. games, or you're done by 2:30. That one was the night games were kicking off by the time it ended.
yeah, we were in it
All
at that
right,
point.
2-1, Maddie B. 2-1,
Yep, 2-1. We'll
one
see.
and zero
Like
in
I said,
SEC play.
going into the season, I remember I had Florida as one of the losses. That's not going to happen. But the overall point was winning on the SEC, winning on the road in the SEC is tough, and that was proven true today, and that will be proven true throughout the season. So
Kudos to South Carolina. They had that place rocking, and they
yeah,
came out the gates with some energy, and LSU did not match it in the first quarter and a few minutes after that. Obviously, they turned it around from there, but
what?
we will be on the Bengal Tiger. We put your rapid reactions on there, my takeaways, the breakdown on how it happened, and really the board's just popping with people talking about the game. So jump in. We do have, if you sign up, the deal is a monthly deal right now. I think you can get it for less than $9 a month to have an annual membership is what it comes out to. So head to thebengaltiger.com on 3. And as we continue to grow, a big shout out to everyone
Yeah.
who's a member and has joined the family over there.
What our game thread has 82 pages. That is
You
people.
don't want to.
That
You
was
don't want to read about 70 of those pages. I'm
that was
telling
one of the
you.
more active games, start to finish. And again, because it was just crazy. There was always something to talk about. But that was one of the more active like game threads I feel like we've had. At least this season for sure. Like that was just start to finish, every play,
And
everybody was
LSU has
reacting.
still never lost at South Carolina. We're at Williams-Brice.
There you go.
The
See when they
streak,
play them.
the streak that nobody knew about continues.
All
All
right,
right. Yeah,
everybody,
we're
exhale,
exhausted. That was a long game. Let's move
exhale.
on.
Everybody take a nap.
Then get
Drink
back to the
your
Bengal Tiger. We'll be hanging out on the message board and
yeah,
writing some articles.
yeah. But yeah, we thank y'all for joining us. Leave us a like, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't already. Subscribe to the Bengal Tiger if you have not already. Again, that's where we hang out. You can ask us questions. You can do everything on there. Interact with LSU fans.
We make memes and
Make me.
GIFs.
Yes, we do. There you
We
go.
call people pal. It's a fun
We have a
time.
great time. We have a great
We
time.
actually do.
So subscribe over there. And if you haven't already, go to Amazon Prime and check out the Money
Yeah,
Game.
the money game.
So there
It's
you
actually taken off. 6-part docuseries. The behind the scenes is insane on that. But yeah,
Yeah.
goes into the kind of that opening era of NIL and at LSU, focused on all those athletes of Jaden Daniels and Livy and Flaugier and Angel and so forth, of kind of how they maneuvered through it all. You get a lot of cool behind the scenes footage, a lot of locker room stuff with Mulkey football team. So pretty cool to watch.
Yep. So check that out. We'll be back with our mailbag podcast this week. So check that out as well. And y'all have a nice weekend. We'll talk to y'all later.